I'd like to sort of just go back a step a little bit in terms of that role that you have as a CIO at Urban Edge. And, when you're dealing with 17 million square feet and you've got 70 plus buildings, how are you prioritizing sort of the innovation initiatives that you run? What are those priorities? It would be really interesting to hear your side on that.
Yeah, especially when you're in a budgeting time, right? That's
Yeah.
when we exercise these priorities, right?
And
And I,
like 150 plus employees as well.
yeah,
they must all have demand. So
oh yeah.
what's that journey look like?
Uh, Look, I think ultimately we're always talking about what moves the needle. That's number one. And number two is if it's related to governance and security. That's really important for us as an organization as well.
Sorry, just go back for me, Cecilia. I missed that first one. So the governance I got was the second one. What was the first one?
What moves the needle? Again, we're talking about
Okay.
the bottom line, right? It has to be something that's impactful, that creates value, that generates efficiencies. And then the second part is governance and security.
So let me I'm really interested in that first part on there.
Mm-hmm.
Because how do you assign value and efficiency in an innovation thing? Because quite often in initiatives like this, you have to be looking at a longer term shift rather than a short term shift, because it may not work in the short term. So how can you assess that priority on the values and the efficiency side? What's your measure on that? Is it, is there a time frame on moving the needle, or is it we just have to be able to prove that something is happening? How are you calculating that bit?
Well, when you talk about moving the needle, some things are tangible, some things are intangible, right? So like efficiency, right? It's I'm gonna call it. Sometimes you can attach it to dollars, sometimes you can't. And so it's how many hours from somebody are you taking away of mundane work so that they can focus on true work that will impact the organization.
Right.
So that's from a what's the word that we were using, efficiency standpoint, right?
Yeah.
But ultimately, we always have to ask ourselves, what is it, or what are we solving? Why are we solving it? Who are we benefiting, or who's going to be benefiting? Who's going to be accountable for this, right? And when are we going to look to implement this, right? So when we're talking about priorities, we always follow kind of this fill in the blanks, right? And and then decide, right? There's so much out there, right? There's so many products, and if a business comes to me and say, we have this problem, if it's a big problem or it requires call it a platform, right?
Yeah.
We go into the discovery process, and you really have to really know what the needs are of the organization, and then funnel it through all the questions that I mentioned earlier. And I said earlier, we have a project request form that actually it's filled out by the business, and the business must prove, right, that they're able to fulfill all of these buckets. And the intention, by the way, is not just for the sake of having somebody fill out a form, right? The intention of the form is to create a committee that will really think about this, right? Because we are not looking to spend haphazardly, right? Like if we're going to do something, it better make a difference in our organization.
That's really, it's a very interesting way of doing it. And almost as much for you as for anyone else. There's some really interesting, some of the interviews I've already done with people who do things in a slightly different but similar way. I would advise you watching the Great Portland Estates interview, where James and Ella talk about how they have their innovation committees. And they call, sorry, no, the other way around. They have what they call innovation champions. And I think 25% of their organization, and it's a very similar size to yours, are the people that have the sort of the say on the products and how they gauge that. And then there's also the one with, who was it? PGIM, a bit of a larger organization where they have these innovation committees, which are set around learning all of that as well. So for those of you who are watching this edit, do look at the PGIM interviews and the GPE interviews, because there's a similar discussion around that, which would be, I think, would be particularly interesting for you.